Aloha aina, ano ai, velina kako. Welcome to Free Hawaii News, brought to you by the Koani Foundation, presenting Hawaiian perspectives on a broad range of topics and issues affecting the Hawaiian Islands, the Pacific, and the world. Your hosts for Free Hawaii News are Leon Kaulahau-Siu, musician, composer, diplomat, and political analyst, and Hinaleimoana Wong, Kumu filmmaker, cultural and Hawaiian language preservationist, and community leader. And now, Free Hawaii News.
Ano ai me ke aloha ia kākua pauloa mai ka hikino kala I hae ai ko velona kala I lehua. Mahalo anui ko kākou hui ana o wau no keia o Kumuhina.
Aloha and welcome to Free Hawaii News. My name is Leon Kaulahau-Siu, and I'm very glad to have you here.
In the weeks following the fires that devastated Lahaina and the surrounding areas, inexpensive housing called tiny houses that could be quickly constructed gave many people hope. However, housing options on Maui are more limited than ever, and prices are at all-time highs. A notoriously long permitting process and a thicket of regulations have stalled projects on Maui going back decades. Residents now say these same delays are preventing tiny houses from being built. Meanwhile, experts say that in an unprecedented emergency like this, Maui must pursue every means possible, like tiny homes, to get fire victims housed. For an on-the-ground update, we go now to Maui, where Victoria Palafox is standing by. Aloha mai, Victoria.
Aloha Hina, and mahalo for inviting me here to sit with you on Free Hawaii News.
What's it been like for fire victims who are trying to get housing for their ohana and their family?
There's a lot of sadness still, much worries, frustration, and the looking for transparency in all that is happening here in Lahaina, and the things that come before us, and the offerings that is given at this time. Worries, a lot of worries of where are they going, what's going to happen to them, because they don't want to leave their home, Lahaina.
What do you feel that are some people's attitudes today on Maui about this situation, about housing and what's available?
A lot of listening, because there was a lot of reports going on the news, statements being made that we are not seeing for ourselves at this time, like building of homes and our people. Are they moving in there? Are they leaving Hawaii? 200 homes, maybe about a month or two after the fire was being constructed in Kahului. It's still in construction. Across, we see a church that has temporary dome houses up. No one inside. It seems like it's up for display.
What would you say would be the outlook and the perspectives of fire survivors overall today at this current point on Maui?
Heartbreaking. Knowing that they may need to leave the islands. I have gone to Las Vegas just to visit some of my family that had left Lahaina. Heartbroken, but positive on their livelihoods there in Las Vegas, because there's home for them there. There is job close in the community, such as it was in Lahaina. So heartbreaking to have to leave the island that you were born, Lahaina, where you raised your children and probably yourself too.
What percentage might you say, Victoria, of displaced families are giving up and planning to move out of Hawaii.
There was a total of about 3,000 people in the hotels in Lahaina. Half of them, almost half of them are gone. Much in Arizona, I have met families. As I said, I went to Las Vegas. I met much. Big Islands, they've moved to Big Island, Oahu, Kauai, everywhere else. But their true home, Lahaina.
How many tiny houses have been put up?
There's about 100 still being built. And we see temporary homes being put up as display. Here we go with commerce. That's what it looks like to me. Putting temporary homes up on this open land belonging to developers. And the people not having shelter. They're leaving the hotels at this time because they have to. They're running out of money, the corporation. I see families on the beach sides outside of Ka'anapali in their tent in the county parks with their children. Frustration. But yet the news talk of projects, of homes coming. But when? It's been about 6 months or so talking of homes, temporary homes. We see the trailers, we see the lumbers, we see them starting to build, none available at this time.
What kind of conversations are you hearing on the ground amongst fire survivors?
We were born with aloha. We carry our aloha so deep within us. Maka'ala, our people. For Akua is watching all the movement of these things. Faith in our generation, faith in our kupunas of time past. For they have not broken promises to us. They have built a foundation. And we, as a ohana, as a nation, we will stand together in aloha. You will not take the aloha away from us. For aloha is what will build and rebuild our city. Our aloha that we are born with will help us and nothing else.
No laila, mahalo anui ya oe Victoria. Mahalo anui no keia hui ana mahalo nui ya oe ko mau mana'o. Aloha.
Mauna Kea is back in the news with a request to the U.S. National Science Foundation for funding to finish construction of the 30-meter telescope, the TMT. Another aspect that's also been in the spotlight recently is the transition for responsibility of Mauna Kea lands from the University of Hawaii to the Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority. To explain what the Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority is and its role on Mauna Kea, we go now to Hawaii Island, where Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority member Noenoe Wong Wilson is standing by. Aloha mai e Noenoe.
Aloha, Leon. It's good to be here today on Free Hawaii News.
You were also one of the kia'i, or protectors, that got arrested for protecting Mauna Kea during the 2019 attempt to build a 30-meter telescope, yes?
I was one of 38 kupuna, or elders, who chose to sit in our chairs on the road that had been closed by the governor, by the way. So we refused to move. We refused to leave when ordered by law enforcement. And we were surrounded, of course, by all of the lahui, the young people, the makua, the opio, who were there and ready and willing to also lay their bodies down on the road. But, you know, in the wisdom that comes with being kupuna, we asked them to sit to the side to support what we were going to do. And a number of us took our chairs and held our positions on the road. Only 38 of us were arrested that day, but there were a number of kupuna, dozens more, who were willing to be arrested and didn't. So yes, we were all there, and I was one of them. Yes.
How many members are there on the Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority?
There are actually 11 voting members and one non-voting member. So the one non-voting member is the Chancellor of University of Hawaii at Hilo, Bonnie Irwin. And the reason I believe that she is non-voting is because the university already has a vote, and they're represented by the University of Hawaii Regents. So of the 11, of the 11 voting board members, 8 of us are Kanaka Maoli. And so that includes, and let me make sure I mentioned them all, but that includes, of course, myself. And I can even explain to you our functions on the board, because this is a little bit of an unusual makeup where most of the seats are described. And the members who sit in those seats have to have a particular kind of knowledge or understanding in order to sit on the board. And that was all recommended by the working group, because we wanted to make sure that the board wasn't just comprised of political appointees, but in fact, that the board members would bring expertise, because this is a brand new agency, brand new. We started with no employees. Now we have one, and in fact, now we have 2, because we just hired a new executive director. But at any rate, back to the board, I am there as a recommendation from the House Speaker, the Speaker of the House. And he was very adamant that his nominee would be Hawaiian, part Hawaiian. And so I was fortunate he nominated me to sit on that. The second member is Lanakila Manguel, and he represents, he sits on the authority in the seat of a Native Hawaiian practitioner recognized by the community. So that is his seat. There is one other member, Pomai Bertelman, who comes from Waimea. She sits in a seat designated for a lineal descendant of a practitioner of Mauna Kea, and she certainly is well known, and her family, the Bertelman family, is well known for coming from that area and being very much practitioners of Mauna Kea. Kamana Beamer, Dr. Kamana Beamer, another prominent Hawaiian figure, sits in the position that is an AINA, not a person knowledgeable in our AINA and land management on Hawaii Island. He has that experience. We have an educator who represents the P through 23, the whole educational spectrum, and that is Dr. Kalehua Krug, who is principal of charter school on Oahu. The representative of the Land and Natural Resources director, so that's one seat, and the director gets to name someone to sit in that seat. So that representative is Ryan Kanaka Ole. So Ryan is the new first deputy of the Department of Land Natural Resources. He was, prior to that, serving as our deputy AG, so he's very knowledgeable about Mauna Kea and has been involved from that department in the Mauna Kea issues for a long time. So he is Kanaka Maoli's from Ka'u. And also Doug Adams, who represents the mayor of the county of Hawaii. He is the director of R&D, but he is also Kanaka Maoli and comes from this island. And Paul Horner, he's the last one. Paul Horner is Kanaka Maoli. He represents an individual with business and finance background. So He is Kanaka Maoli, and that's 8 of us. So the other members who are not Kanaka Maoli are John Komeiji, who is our chair, and he was named or nominated by the Senate President. Of course, I mentioned Bonnie earlier. Rich Matsuda, who represents the observatories. He is nominated by the observatories to represent them. The majority of us are also community members. So this is, I think, an organization that is unusual in its makeup in state government, and it really is heavily weighted by community members, and so that's who we are.
What specific thing is the authority currently doing to protect the Mauna?
In the legislation, there is a 5-year transition period, and we are in actually literally not even finished with year 1 by our clock. So what we are currently doing is trying to establish the rules, the regulations, the management plan. We're just beginning that. Uh, Creating our outreach program so that we can communicate with our community and they can communicate, you all can communicate with us in a much better way.
At what point does the Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority become the principal authority on the Mauna?
In the legislation, there is a 5-year transition period, and we are in actually literally not even finished with year 1 by our clock. So what we are currently doing is trying to establish the rules, the regulations, the management plan. We're just beginning that. Uh, Creating our outreach program so that we can communicate with our community and they can communicate, you all can communicate with us in a much better way. We're restricted, as you know, by such things as the sunshine laws, which we all know has really good purpose, but also causes us to have to move very, very slowly. And I don't think to the benefit of the Mauna, but that's a whole nother conversation we can have. We meet as a group every month. So we have a board meeting every month. And at that board meeting, Greg Chun from the Center for Mauna Kea Stewardship, which is under the university's management, comes and reports to us and lets us know what's going on.
Do other agencies, such as the Hawaii Department of Land and Natural Resources, also have authority there?
As far as I understand, they have no authority over what we do. So DLNR doesn't have any ability to determine if what we do is correct. There's no separate level of approval that we have to go through.
What does the Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority see for the future of Mauna Kea?
The purpose and the focus of the authority is much different than the universities. And we are looking, and we're very serious about our kuleana to take care of Mauna Kea and to make sure that all of the activities that occur on the Mauna and all the attributes of the Mauna are something that falls under the kuleana of the authority. So we want to make sure, of course, that our conservation efforts are enhanced, that the replanting of our species and taking care of our endangered species up there, replanting of the mamane and silver sword and things of that sort, are really uppermost in our intention. That our Mauna and the people of Hawaii get to understand more about what Mauna Kea means and all of its attributes and all of its areas of both ecological, environmental, and social and cultural.
Can the public give input to the Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority and attend their meetings?
Our meetings occur every second Thursday of the month at 10 o'clock. And we do use Zoom, so you can just Zoom in and watch it on YouTube. You can apply to testify when you see the hearing notice come out.
Mahalo nui loa noi noi for joining us for this portion of Free Hawaii News.
One of the organizations here in Hawaii that has helped hold the line of opposition to the TMT is HULI, which stands for Hawaii Unity and Liberation Institute. HULI provides important community involvement opportunities like nonviolent direct action trainings, as well as community organizing and action support for Hawaiian social justice issues. Here to tell us more about HULI is Hawaiian cultural practitioner and activist, as well as longtime friend, Andre Perez. Aloha mai kaua, Andre.
Aloha Hina, mahalo for having me.
Mahalo. Please, if you would, indulge us. Tell us about HULI and how you got it off the ground and its journey.
Yeah, so there's two primary parts to HULI. One is the name itself, HULI, which was really the slogan for Kokua Hawaii, one of the earliest Hawaiian social justice organizing activist groups, led by Kalani Ohelo and Soli Neheo and others. Of course, 2015, we're all up on the Mauna. We're organizing to stop the TMT. We're working against the TMT and the corporations that want to build this telescope on our mountain. And we started to realize that there's activism, theoretical methods and philosophy and stuff that we don't know in the form of nonviolent direct action. And so I started going to the States, to places like Florida, California, Colorado, Washington State, to these different nonviolent direct action training camps. And I realized that it's not sustainable for us to be taking people out of Hawaii. We need to develop our own capacity to learn and teach nonviolent direct action. So with that said, me and my partner Camille and friends, we organized a small convening to create HULI, and we convened at Makena, Maui. I think it was in 2015, and the original co-founders was myself, my partner Camille Kalama, Ilima Long, Kaho'okahi Kanuha, Nalani Balutsky, Kalekoa Ka'eo, Kahele Duklo, and Walter Riddy, Uncle Walter. And it was in just a weekend gathering where we kind of envisioned and strategized the creation of this small action org that could bring nonviolent direct action and activism training to our community. So at that time, we committed to creating HULI, and we continue to learn and develop our own training capacity around nonviolent direct action activism and organizing.
Mahalo. So Andre, as someone who could be characterized as a champion for this understanding of nonviolent direct action, what could you say are the basic understandings or the basic fundamentals of nonviolent direct action?
Nonviolent direct action, fundamentally is an intervention, but it's guided or informed by philosophy, methods. It's very organized and structured. So there's tools that are built within the philosophy and curriculum of nonviolent direct action that help us analyze power and where the decision-making power is, and then strategy and tactics to intervene and disrupt oftentimes the bad or negative use of that power, in this case against Hawaiian people or their environment. Nonviolent direct action is an intervention that seeks to disrupt processes, again, to bring the issue to light to the community and to move the community to action through this process. Our primary goal in the beginning was to develop our own capacity to teach and learn nonviolent direct action, and we've done that in Hawaii. Now, the other goals really, I think, what we talk about and what we strive for is to, through training, to develop a very organized Hawaiian community and non-Hawaiian ally community into the philosophy and structure of nonviolent direct action so that it enhances our activism and increases our chances of success through better organizing and analytical tools towards the power that we're confronting. So the main primary goal, I would say, of HULI is to really empower the community with the knowledge of nonviolent direct action so that the smaller communities, perhaps on the outer islands, can represent themselves and organize themselves to take on issues that are unjust and that are impacting community and environment. Through our analytical tools within nonviolent direct action curriculum, we're able to, one, look at where are the points of intervention, whether it be a boardroom or a construction site or a factory that's manufacturing and impacting. Utilizing these tools gives us better analysis, and through that analysis helps us develop more efficient and productive strategy and tactics. And so basically, HULI, what we teach is nonviolent direct action principles and methods, but we also teach what we call action media or tactical media, where the power of the cell phone, what can you do with your cell phone to shoot video, edit that video, add captions, add voiceover, music, whatever, upload to social media or other places to really help to inform community about issues. So through tactical media, I think what we learned through the Pu'uhuluhulu Mauna Kea occupation was our media was very powerful and important. Many of my friends in the States who engage in these kinds of activism, their feedback to us was very positive, that our media coming out of Pu'uhuluhulu was rock solid, informative, consistent, and provided a lot of information to the community that was watching and wanting to support, and it gave them inroads to support and come up to the Mauna. One more thing that we're planning is, I think, the fundamental of activism, which is organizing, community organizing. If you don't know how to organize, it's very hard to pull off an action, an intervention, or just a protest or a rally. All of that is grounded in organizing. So right now we're partnering with an organization called Native Organizers Alliance, largely led by Native American indigenous people, and they teach organizing across the US, and they have for years. We're bringing them to Hawaii, and we're partnering with them to develop a Hawaiian-based curriculum around organizing so that we'll be able to teach organizing, nonviolent direct action, which is like civil resistance intervention, tactical media or action media, and action art. Action art is the low-tech, low-budget, high-impact creation of visuals through silkscreen, through hand painting, stenciling. If anyone remembers all the visuals that were up on Mauna Kea during the Pu'uhuluhulu occupation, all of those banners and signs we made through action art, through design and low-tech, low-budget approaches.
What role do you feel HULI played in the resistance to building TMT?
Well, the role that we played, from 2015 forward to 2019, for 4 years, we were going out into community and running training, nonviolent direct action. So we had trainings on Maui, Kauai, Hawaii Island, multiple, Kona and Honoka'a. We had trainings here on Oahu. And it was really we knew that TMT was coming, and we wanted to better prepare the community to engage through nonviolent direct action. And then we helped organize and facilitate the establishment of the occupation that became Pu'uhonua o Pu'uhuluhulu. And we helped to fundraise and support logistics for the media team, for the Kupuna camp. We were kind of in over our heads, but that's what we did. It was all action support, training, guidance, facilitation around strategic and tactical engagement with the opposition.
So in terms of the impact that HULI has had, what would you say would be your single biggest impact that HULI may have had either on Mauna Kea or any other issue that you've been met with so far?
Oh, that's a big one. I mean, everybody contributed to protecting Mauna Kea, and everybody contributed to the positive impact. But one thing that I feel good about is that I think we have helped to slowly sort of demystify activism and direct action. People tend to think, just on the outside looking in, that it's just a bunch of rabble-rousers making waves, holding sign, protesting, screaming and shouting, and nothing could be further from the truth. It's very organized, very tactical, analytical, and strategic. And I think that one thing that made me feel good was that all the people who came up to Mauna Kea, particularly the kupuna, the elders who took the lead in the blockade for 8 months, I would like to think that maybe HULI has helped to demystify the discomfort of activism and social justice organizing and direct action, because I see that people are starting to use some of the terminology around optics, action logic, points of intervention. And so when people start to use the terminology, that tells me that they're understanding the tools and they're utilizing them.
Mahalo. Would you have any message regarding the efforts to build TMT? Because we know that it didn't completely go away. It's sort of lying dormant there.
Yeah, and well, we just heard that the NSF has awarded $1.6 billion to, not the TMT, but to the conglomerate that is the TMT and the GMT, the Giant Magellan Telescope, and that they have to decide how they're going to use that money, whether for TMT or GMT. So there's a possibility that TMT could come back to Hawaii. And if that does happen, I would say my message to TMT, if they do come back to Hawaii, they are going to be met with a highly organized, highly committed, protracted community resistance like they've never seen before. The community, after 8.5 months of being on Mauna Kea, our spears are sharpened. We know the logistics. We know what it requires to be up there and to protect the Mauna. If they come back, our organizing and our resistance is going to be better and stronger and more committed with more people. No question.
Mahalo, Andre. To wrap us up here in our little dialogue, do you have any final sentiments that you would want to share with our viewer audience about perhaps HULI or nonviolent direct action, intervention, anything that you'd like to share?
Well, sure. I just, message to the community, for the Hawaiian community particular, all of the big wins for Hawaiians, if you look at the history from Kaho'olawe to Waihole Waikane to Honokahua, which resulted in burial laws, burial councils, which you know very well, to the establishment of Hawaiian immersion through the original Hawaiian language preschools in Kekaha, to Mauna Kea, and to, geothermal on Hawaii Island, Waukele Opuna was stopped. All of that came through not legislation, not friendly politicians, it came through community organizing and direct action. At those times in the 70s, 80s, 90s, we weren't calling it direct action, but that's what it was. It was community interventions. And so, we have Kaho'olawe back in a trust for a future Hawaiian governing entity because of organizing Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana and direct action. Waihole Waikane development was stopped because of direct action, community organizing, shutting down the road, blocking. When we look at Honokahua, Skipi Iowane, Palikapu, organizing the community, exposing the desecration of, I think it was 1,200 or 1,400 sets of iwi kupuna, and the list goes on. But the message is that it's through community organizing and power building and unity and working together that all of the big wins for Hawaiians has happened. It hasn't come through friendly legislation. Now, legislation has come out of it, but it was after putting pressure through the action. So let's not lose sight of that. And the message is, that we have the ability and the power to shape our lives and our communities, protect our environment, our water, our land, through organizing and taking matters into our own hands.
We segue now to one of my most favorite portions of our show, and this is talking about the Pacific Way. When we talk about this, if we walk ourselves back down for the last several shows that we've done, it is our opportunity to speak to not only what makes us unique as Kanaka, but being unique as Kanaka for Hawaii is also connected to our relationships and our history to the South Pacific. This takes us to just so much more of an expansive, how do I say it, not only superhighway, but our islands and our family that we find in Polynesia, to Tahiti, Nukuhiva, Samoa, Tonga, Tokelau, Tuvalu, Aotearoa, Rapa Nui. There are so many islands that share historical connection. They share genealogy. So we as Kanaka here in the Northern Pacific, we are a part of a larger family that spans thousands of miles across the Pacific Ocean, across the Moana Nui a Kanaloa. So when we talk about Pacific Way, we're not only talking about what makes us Kanaka, but what makes us Kanaka is also what makes us Polynesian. And being Polynesian is a part of our understanding of being Pacific Island peoples. Ina oe ke holohe nei no maka olelo makuahine o kākou no keia Kanaka, kākou no keia e noho nei maka Moana Nui a Kanaloa. Kākou nei pili ohana kākou ko kākou mo o ku auhau I ka poe a Pauloa ko keia Moana Nui. Mao ko kākou mo o ku auhau, mao ko kākou mo aukala, o ka wā kahiko. So, Leon?
Yes. Well, mahalo for that, and you're absolutely right. There's another aspect to it as well, though. The Pacific is not just the Polynesians, because we are, of course, next door to the Micronesians right now, as well as the Melanesians in the further south. And we all are island people. And the amazing thing is that as we journey through all of these different islands, we find we're all very similar because of our environment, because of our mo'oku auhau. We actually are people who have worked together or traveled amongst each other, interacted with one another for eons. So we actually, the Pacific Way and the Pacific people is all influenced by us being islanders, being in a unique environment of little puddles of land scattered over this great continent of ocean. And as you said, the continent was not a barrier. It was actually our highway to one another. So the interaction that took place over the years actually really created a large Pacific society of islands. And then we reached out as well and touched the continents surrounding the Pacific. So we really stretch out all over the Pacific as well as onto the edges of the continents of North and South America and Australia. And anyway, so the Pacific Way really has to do with how we view our lives and our presence and our existence in the presence of a great ocean.
Absolutely. And in fact, I'd like to take this time out to speak to an important fundamental concept that we could use to summarize the Pacific Way. And the Pacific Way, contradictory to the Western influence, the influence for us here in Hawaii through the United States of America, a basic understanding of being American is individuality, and each individual person's freedom, their liberty, But again, the primary focus is on the individual. I think part of what tends to plague our communities that we have been required to shift from a society and a culture that focused on the collective, the cumulative. And we've turned to seeking our own personal ideology, our own personal wishes, our own personal everything to such a great degree that it's very hard sometimes for our own people to know how to think and put themselves back into the mindset of Pacific Way. So, for example, what we like, what we don't like, we've gotten so very accustomed to being individualistic in our thinking and in our posturing of anything that we do in life. We forget that sometimes it's not just about what we want. And we saw this play out when people are required to do something en masse. And when people are asked to follow suit, sometimes when we're asked to do it, it's because as a group, as a collective, there's got to be at some point the ability for us to think beyond what is my own individual want. And we have to be able to discern the difference between what makes us a distinct collective group of people, Kanaka, that know how to unify, that know how to galvanize. And then there are times when we can think about ourselves and worry nothing about anybody else. And that usually is only in our own home. But if we live with other people, even that, well, we're going to have to think about others. And I think that keeping it simple for this program's Pacific Way, most important thing is Pacific Way requires us to be concerned with the well-being, the welfare of others. It requires us to be conscious of how we are interconnected and how we are all reliant at some point upon each other to honor and respect this. That's not something that always comes with the stereotypical American way of life. What do you think about that?
Yes, I think you bring out an excellent point. Individualism is emphasized in the colonial world that has interrupted our lives. In other words, just as you explained, the emphasis being on me, my, if I'm happy, what makes me happy, also means I don't care about you.
Yes.
That's what it translates into. And unfortunately, this is what we see. That is one of the legacies of the colonial thinking, is that many of our people have been affected by this and have adopted this way of thinking as the individual being more important than the collective, and which is totally opposite of how we were initially raised and as our people had developed as far as a society. And it's not something that is based on commerce and how much I can get, but it's how do we help each other? How do we make each other succeed? And I don't use the word succeed in the sense of competitiveness. I mean, how do we make each other happy? How do we make life pono? How do we keep things in balance? These are the kinds of values that we really need to bring back into our lives, because we have been so affected by the lies of the individualism and every man for himself, so to speak, which gets extremely damaging. The only time they work together when it's going to benefit the individual, because it benefits him to work with somebody else, but it's still based on the individual rewards, individual advancement, and those kinds of incentives which really damages the way people and it also damages how you relate to the world, because that's how this benefits me translates also to what can I use of this land or of my surroundings that's going to benefit me, and I don't really care how it hurts the land or anybody else. I just care about the benefits. And you know, we've had discussions, for instance, about like the deep sea mining and that's being proposed. This is typical of that, is that here's a resource, but we can't just let it lie, is that they see some kind of profit in it. Not only some kind, they see tremendous profit. It's irresistible in their mindset that they can't leave it alone. They have to go get it, and they have to then trade it and make money and things like that. We, on the other hand, see it and say, wow, that's a tremendous phenomenon. That's unusual. It's lying all over the seabed, but that's where it belongs. You know, I'm not going to go pick it up so that we can melt it down and extract all the metals and things like that. Because why would we do that? Why? Except the only reason to do it is for gain, for profit, for individuals who want money.
Yes.
You know? So it's just, and I look forward to the time when our nation does return, and then we're able to recalibrate our thinking, recalibrate our actions and our priorities to how do we take care of one another, how do we make each other happy, and how do we live together and be productive together. The stationing of the United States Armed Forces in the Hawaiian Islands violates the bilateral Treaty of Friendship, Trade, and Navigation of 1849, and all subsequent treaties made between the Hawaiian Kingdom and the United States, 1870, 1883, and 1884. The presence of the U.S. Armed Forces in the Hawaiian Islands also violates numerous international laws, such as the Law of Nations, the laws of occupation, as defined by the Hague Conventions and the Geneva Conventions, and the UN Charter, the UN Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, and so on. The stationing of the United States Armed Forces in the Hawaiian Islands places a tremendous economic burden on the people and resources of the Hawaiian Islands. But most egregious, the United States military presence in the Hawaiian Islands constitutes a clear and present danger to the kingdom and the people of the Hawaiian Islands. The presence of the United States Armed Forces exposes all the people of Hawaii to grave and mortal danger of preemptive or retaliatory strikes by enemies of the United States. Unlike the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 using conventional bombs and bullets, today the strikes would be by nuclear weapons with multiple warheads carried by unstoppable missiles. The entire civilian population of the Hawaiian Islands and almost all other life forms would be annihilated in minutes. The only survivors would be the U.S. military personnel and political elites in hardened bunkers. The Kingdom of the Hawaiian Islands, as a neutral country and a peaceful people, harbors no animosity toward anyone, even the United States. We are at the United Nations to trigger their mechanisms to free Hawaii from the illegal occupation of the United States. Besides the return of our right to self-determination, self-governance, and independence from foreign control and abusive practices, we are urgently demanding the United States withdraws its military operations from the Hawaiian Islands. This entails drawing down and removal of all U.S. military personnel, training activities, weaponry, toxic residue of its operations, and from the entire archipelago of the Hawaiian Islands. But the only way we can make that happen is by extricating ourselves from the grip of the United States and reinstating ourselves as a sovereign, independent country. As long as we remain a state of the United States, or even if we went back to being a territory of the United States, we have no effective say regarding the presence of the U.S. military in our islands, and we have no say in the conduct of the United States in using its military presence in Hawaii to provoke and threaten its enemies, exposing us to the danger of annihilation. At the United Nations, we are getting close to triggering an action at the General Assembly that will expose the United States' fraudulent claim to Hawaii and place us on the path to restore our sovereign, independent, neutral nation at peace with the world, and to govern ourselves with the principles of Malama Aina and Kapu Aloha.
During the time of the COVID pandemic, it was very contentious when government was pushed to enact and enforce certain things that made people be required to do something like wearing a mask. And my personal experience with that, when I heard that this was being told to us, if you ask Kumu, do you think that the government should tell us how to do certain things? And my answer would be no, we shouldn't necessarily have to do that. But again, this is just me. So this is where I make sure that this is Kumuhina's mana'o only, because I know that this is going to get our viewers talking about something. I personally did not take it too much, how do I say it, I didn't allow it to disrupt me, because I remember that when I was growing up, my mother was a surgical assistant. She was the right hand to surgeons performing open heart surgery and any other kind of surgery that you could have either in the emergency room or in the hospital. And my mother had taught me a lot of what their medical practices were. And so as a little child, waiting for her in the nurse's lounge or the doctor's lounge, I'd see her wearing, she's covered. The only part of my mother that you could see were her eyes. But there was mask, there was hat, there was gloves, and she had the whole suit. She told me how they scrubbed up, and then she told me the reason why they wear a mask. Because I used to ask her, Mom, why do you wear a mask? And she said, because anytime you have an open wound, particles, microscopic particles are always emitted. And in order to ensure that the patient is absolutely safe and does not receive anything transmitted just from speaking, that was their standard medical practice. And as someone who grew up under this, when it came time to a COVID pandemic, I didn't allow it to really throw me a curve. And, you know, I think what was more jarring for everybody who were not good with it, and I'm sure that many in our viewer audience, they might not have been good with with government saying what to do. But for me personally, I went into the Pacific Way, because the Pacific Way helped me to understand that, okay, because I understand that this was something that was medically a standard practice, I said, okay, I can do my part. And if I cared about the next person, I know that I and everybody else, we walk around with germs, we walk around with whatever, and that's how we transmit things. So, you know, the idea that I could do something to help others was important to me. And so I said, okay. And it was no problem, but that's because I had to internally go to a place of Pacific Way. And when it's time to set aside my own comfort, I personally never wanted to wear one. I didn't want to wear a mask. I didn't want to be impeded upon. I didn't want to be burdened by it. I didn't want to have to like always be conscious about it. But at the same time, I remembered I didn't want to make my mom sick. I didn't, you know, we go places and you never know what you catch. It's easy as catching a cold or anything. And with so many things that went on around that pandemic time, all I told myself was, you're a Pacific Islander, you know what to do. So when it comes time to roll it out, like in traditional times, in traditional Hawaii, or even now, modern Hawaii, being a kumuhula, being in a halau, there is nothing democratic about a halau. The kumuhula is the reigning monarch. What the kumuhula says goes. So I said, okay, well, it's not my fashion statement, it's not my comfort, but I can do it. But that was an example for me of Pacific Way and how it helped me to deal with being told what I didn't want to do, because I didn't want to do it. And I didn't want to be uncomfortable, but I said, okay, well, Pacific Island Way, hiki no a'oli pilikia. So I use this personal example, of course, not to start controversy and get people angry or anything, but that's how Pacific Island Way helped me to accept being told what to do. I am Kanaka. And when I have to sacrifice something that I like or something that's good for me, but not necessarily good for everybody, I know that there's a time and a place where I can focus on me, but there's greater honor that can come to me if I think of others, if I sacrifice for others, or if I simply put the welfare and the benefit of the group before my own needs.
Mahalo nui loa for joining us for this episode of Free Hawaii News. It's been a pleasure for us to be here with you, and we hope you enjoyed the show.
No leila e kia naino ko kākou hui launa ana ke ia la. Mahalo anu ia oko no ko oko kipa a hoʻonenea ana mai. Mahalo no ke ia hui ana. I maluhia no ko kākou no ho ana a hui hou kākou. Aloha.
We hope you enjoyed this month's episode of Free Hawaii News. Mahalo for watching. There's a new show every month, so this program will air several more times this month. You can view it anytime on Olelo's on-demand site or on YouTube. See you next time. Ahui ho, aloha aina.
Free Hawaii Broadcasting Network.